Well, we've heard lots about the politics behind this story, but what about the people? Who are these children and where do they come from? The Congressional Research Service has released a study on the flow of unaccompanied migrant children who cross the border into America. President Trump has often focused on Mexican immigrants. Well, the study, in fact, found that the majority of unaccompanied minors coming into the U.S. were from Central America, mainly Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. The study also found that the number of illegal child immigrants spiked in the years 2014 and 50, 70,000 and 60,000 illegal entrants respectively. But those figures have since declined. Well, let's talk to Miguel Tinker Salas, who's a professor of Latin American Studies at Pomona College, who joins us now from LA. Welcome to TRT World. The White House bubble will perhaps inevitably concentrate on the symptoms rather than the cause, and we should look at where these children have come from and why they have fled their homes.
No doubt, because if we looked at the countries you mentioned in the congressional survey, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Mexico. Those are countries that are feeling the effects of largely a failed policy on drug trafficking. As the U.S. and Mexico have moved to clamp down on trafficking in Mexico, it has pushed that crisis further south into El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala, into the area known as the Triangle, the Northern Triangle. And there you have essentially the outcome of a failed policy where the state has retreated, where narco traffickers control much of the public social interaction. And that, on top of the economic crisis, has made life impossible for immigrants and for those populations who live there. And the only recourse they can find is, in fact, to seek asylum in the U.S., so that they are refugees in many ways of a failed policy implemented by the U.S. and implemented by the states of the region. And that's the principal cause of this large wave of immigration that we've seen in the last few years.
And can we really say that U.S. foreign policies, directly or indirectly, have really caused the influx of so many immigrants to the United States?
We have seen throughout the period in which the so-called war on drugs has taken place what essentially is called the balloon effect. When you hold the balloon down in one area, the air moves to another area. And that's essentially what we have as you constrict and the movement of narco trafficking in one region, it then arises in another region. And that has happened in the Northern Triangle, in the region between El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala, where the cartels have moved into, where the state is weak, where they have been unable to restrain the cartels, where the cartels and the state actually are one and the same. So for the local residents, it's impossible to distinguish the state from the cartels, which means that they control their lives, they control their source of employment, and to escape that, families, including mothers, have taken their children out of that region. If you listen to any of the interviews with the mothers with children, they are saying they're trying to escape an intolerable situation in their own home countries. These are, in fact, refugees of a failed U.S. foreign policy.
And how widely reported do you think that is by U.S. media and the U.S. political classes?
Well, I think that they would rather look to the border, as Trump has done himself, to criminalize the immigrants, to make them responsible for the plight that they face, or to displace the crisis somewhere else. But this is also a moral crisis for the U.S. The response that we saw from a Trump administration with regard to a human crisis, a dramatic human crisis in Central America that now has been displaced to the border, has been to criminalize the immigrants, to associate immigrants with drug trafficking organizations, to associate them with the MS-13, when in fact they're trying to escape that reality. These are not criminals. These are economic, political refugees that have been displaced from their home countries and have been forced to find solutions elsewhere other than their own countries.
Professor Salas, thank you very much.